Good day, dear viewers. You are watching the Military Dispatches channel, and today we will break down the situation in Ukraine as of February 17th, 2026. The day has been eventful and packed with developments, so let us get straight to the point. Let us turn to the line of contact and go over all the key events of the past 24 hours. We begin with the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the pace of Ukraine's counter-offensive is falling, noticeably and quite significantly. The main news today comes from the western Zaporizhzhia sector. A number of pro-Russian resources, including large social media accounts with audiences in the millions, report that Ukrainian forces launched a series of counterstrikes toward the settlement of Stepnohirsk over the course of the past day. The operation was carried out by two separate groups. The first entered the northern quarters of Stepnohirsk and established positions there. The second managed to push further, breaking through in a southwesterly direction and entering the settlement of Plavny. And once again we see a familiar picture. Some sources insist that this strike poses no real threat and creates no difficulties for Russian units. According to them, the fighters who dug in on the northern outskirts of Stepnohirsk have lost all their equipment and are reportedly sheltering in basements. As for the situation in Plavny itself, information is almost entirely absent. All that is known is that part of the Ukrainian force managed to break through, but their further fate remains unclear. The logic behind Ukraine's plan is broadly understandable. The entire Russian bridgehead, stretching from Primorsk through Stepnohirsk and further to the northeast towards Zaporizhzhia, is supplied from the main territory, from Kamensk, via the M18 highway. Accordingly, the arrival of Ukrainian units in the Plavny area represents a partial threat to this supply artery, and by extension to the Russian garrison further north. This may not amount to a full blockade, but it does create tangible logistical difficulties for an indefinite period. At the same time, new waves of Ukrainian attacks are expected in the near future. As long as Plavny remains under Ukrainian control, these strikes could prove highly intensive. That said, it bears repeating, the majority of pro-Russian experts, as well as those claiming direct contact with units on the ground, insist that the situation poses no serious threat, and that Russian forces had, by the time this material was being prepared, essentially brought the situation back under control. We will, nonetheless, await further confirmation. The picture on this sector should become clearer in the coming hours. Turning to the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction, fighting continues here along the Haichur River and along the first line of defense. Over the past day, the Ukrainian side has not published a single piece of objective control footage capable of confirming either the counter-offensive itself or control over the settlements previously claimed to have been taken. The only update available is a minor adjustment in the area of Odradna, based on data from neutral mapping services. And that essentially is all. The map in this sector is not changing further. The fighting continues nonetheless, with Russian forces working to hold their positions under unrelenting Ukrainian pressure. Telegram channels affiliated with the Eastern Military Group continue to publish statistics and updates on the course of combat. According to incoming reports, the most intense fighting is unfolding in the area of responsibility of the 29th Army, on the stretch from Ternovate to Hai and Odradne. Notably, if one traces the full chronology of publications about this counter-offensive, heavy fighting on this axis has been ongoing since the very first day, suggesting either that the Ukrainian army has so far been unable to achieve any tangible success here, or that some other dynamic is at play. Moving on to the Dobropilya sector of the front. Several small changes in the situation have been recorded here today. Compared to the map from February 16th, the following adjustments have been made. In the area of Hryshine, the corresponding strongpoint has been marked on the map on the basis of video footage published by the Ukrainian side. The footage shows a series of FPV drone strikes against positions along a tree line south of Hryshine, giving grounds to believe that Russian forces have advanced in this sector and taken the strongpoint under their control. In addition, several video recordings from the area of the Vodianska No. 2 mine have been published by the Ukrainian side. They show Ukrainian Baba Yaga-type drones striking a tree line between Rodinsky and Shevchenko. This footage also suggests that Russian units are advancing along the railway toward the Vodianska mine in preparation for assault operations. The broader trend is clear. The Russian army is gradually moving beyond the boundaries of the Pokrovsk-Myrnograd agglomeration and closing the distance to Dobra-Pilia. Furthermore, Ukrainian sources today, apparently for the first time since the beginning of fighting for this agglomeration, have more or less officially acknowledged the loss of both Pokrovsk and Myrnograd. It should be recalled that Russia's Ministry of Defense reported advances in this sector back in December. In other words, according to Ukrainian accounts, fighting here formally continued for 2 full months after that. Next, the Kostyantynivka direction. According to the latest data and map adjustments, the southwestern flank of Kostyantynivka has finally collapsed. Russian units have broken through the Ukrainian defensive lines and are currently consolidating their positions within the city limits, in its southwestern part. In the near term, they will in all likelihood attempt to straighten the line of contact along Highway H32, with the aim of merging the two bridgeheads, southwestern and southeastern, into a single one. After that, Russian formations will push Ukrainian forces northward on a broader front, toward Osikova and Alexievo-Drushkivka. The key moment in the battle for Kostyantynivka has thus occurred. The breakthrough on the city boundary has happened, and the epicenter of fighting is now shifting toward the city center. Moving to the Sloviansk sector, minor changes have been recorded in the area of Kriva Luka. Pro-Ukrainian sources report that Russian units have, for the first time since fighting began, started gradually infiltrating this settlement. This points to instability in the defense on this axis, and Kriva Luka will in all likelihood pass under Russian control in the near future, forcing the Ukrainian armed forces to fall back further west toward Mykolaiivka and Oleksandrivka. On a related note, an interesting piece of analysis came to light today. Due to a shortage of manpower, Ukraine is adjusting its tactics. The defense of the front line now relies primarily on FPV drone operators. With insufficient infantry, the burden falls on the operators. Offensive operations, meanwhile, are organized through concentrated strike formations capable of being rapidly redeployed from one direction to another, for instance, from the Zaporizhzhia sector to the Kharkiv direction. One analyst suggested that this tactical shift, combined with the launch of counter-offensive operations near Zaporizhzhia and in Kharkiv oblast, could in the foreseeable future lead to the complete exhaustion of Ukraine's offensive potential. We move now to the northeastern part of Kharkiv oblast. Reports indicate that Ukraine has launched a local counter-offensive along the state border in the area of the bridgehead north of the Oskil River. The map has been adjusted accordingly. For now, this information is being circulated exclusively by pro-Russian sources, reliable ones, so we await further data that would allow us to refine the picture. On the Vovchansk direction, Russian forces have firmly seized the initiative, and advances have resumed in the areas of Staritsia, Izbitske, Varvarivka, and Ternova. Recall that over the past week, active advances were recorded near Zelin and Neskuchny. Based on the latest map adjustments and the direction of movement, a clear objective emerges: to link the two bridgeheads between Vovchansk and Liptsi along the designated line, including a large forested area, and then push south on a broad front toward the northeastern outskirts of Kharkiv. It is worth noting that in the context of today's warfare, where drones, including FPV systems, have become the primary instrument of combat, the battle for Kharkiv could take an entirely unpredictable turn. The Russian side may well attempt to launch a full assault on the city, leveraging all the capabilities of modern tactics. Now, the Sumy direction. Changes have also been recorded here in the area of Novodmitrivka. The map looked different as recently as February 15th. On the 16th, reports emerged of Russian advances near Pokrovka. Today, the map is being updated both along the northern encirclement of Novodmitrivka and from the southeast. A clear encirclement pattern is emerging. Russian forces are gradually squeezing the Ukrainian bridgehead between Novodmitrivka and Ryasne, seeking to reach the eastern outskirts of Krasnopilia. In the northern part of the sector, north of Sumy, adjustments have also been recorded near Kondratovka. Pro-Russian sources report advances. By the end of February 17th, Russian forces control approximately 40% of this small village, and in the near term appear to be aiming to reach the northern outskirts of Khotin and Pisarivka. Additionally, footage of a Geran-type drone strike on the central part of Sumy was published today, apparently shot during a night attack. Also worth highlighting is the intensification of Russian advances in the northern part of Sumy oblast. Reports indicate that Russian units have entered the settlement of Zaporizhzhia, located on the border with Kursk oblast near Tetkina. A corresponding map adjustment has been recorded. A new local front may be forming here, from which Russian forces could advance toward Bilopilia and Vorozhba, with the aim of physically severing the railway line connecting Kiev to Sumy. Finally, one more adjustment has been noted in the area of Kharkiv. Along the state border, Russian units are also crossing into Ukrainian territory near Kharkivka. This information comes from pro-Russian sources, and on its basis the grey zone on the map is being expanded. Russian advances are actively underway here as well. What we are witnessing is the core structural problem that Ukraine's armed forces will increasingly face going forward. Replacing the physical presence of infantry on defensive lines with FPV drone operators creates a vulnerability. Russian forces are able to infiltrate across multiple sectors simultaneously, occupying empty villages and settlements along the state border. By the time the next group of drone operators reaches a given area, the Russian side will already have dug in on the ground it has seized. At that very moment, a strike may begin somewhere entirely different, again in a spot with no operators, where reserves will be rushed, but by the time they arrive, Russian units will once again have consolidated their hold. These frequent, pinpoint, seemingly minor jabs could collectively produce entirely unpredictable consequences for the situation along the entire state border. Yet the military situation on the front line is only part of the picture on this particular day, because while the fighting continues across dozens of kilometers of front, a no less significant process is unfolding far from the trenches. Today, a new round of negotiations between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine opened in Geneva, Switzerland. At the time this material was being prepared, the talks were already underway but had not yet concluded. However, one thing is already evident. Both sides arrived at the negotiating table having made a concerted effort to strengthen their respective positions beforehand, and they did so in a very characteristic manner by launching massive strikes against each other's energy infrastructure. The first to strike was Ukraine. From the evening onwards, pro-Ukrainian sources published a map showing the approximate flight routes of Ukrainian drones, the majority of which were directed toward the southern regions of Russia. Russia's Ministry of Defense reported the destruction of 76 drones between 8 p.m. and midnight, with a further 151 intercepted overnight. Based on publications from Krasnodar Krai, the primary target appears to have been an oil refinery. However, the footage suggests that of the more than 200 drones deployed, only a handful reached the target area, and the damage inflicted was minimal. Separate sources also reported anomalies near Kazan and in the vicinity of Uglyuralsky, though the connection between these incidents and Ukrainian strikes remains uncertain. What matters, however, is not only this individual attack but the broader pattern. Strikes on Russian territory have not ceased since February 14th. Over the course of 4 days, Ukraine has deployed approximately 1,000 drones in total, targeting both the southern and northeastern regions of Russia. The vast majority were intercepted by Russian air defense systems. Almost without waiting for the conclusion of the latest Ukrainian wave, Russia launched its retaliatory strike against Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Pro-Ukrainian sources published a map showing hundreds of trajectories, drones, Kh-101 cruise missiles, and a small number of Iskanders. Notably, despite the considerable scale of the strike, 425 munitions according to Ukrainian data, the number of confirmed explosions was relatively limited. Ukraine's military command reported the interception of all 20 Kh-101 missiles and all 4 Iskanders, citing the high effectiveness of its air defenses. Among the confirmed targets, a substation south of Kryvyi Rih, where an explosion and fire were recorded. An energy substation in the center of Odessa, struck with clearly tangible results, and a facility near Borshchi in the southwest of the country. Based on published maps, the main vector of strikes was aimed at western Ukraine. The Burshtyn power plant and the western Ukrainian 750 kilovolt substation were in all likelihood targeted. Indirect confirmation of damage to the Burstin plant comes from footage showing a convoy of fire engines and ambulances heading in its direction. Also deserving of attention is information about a specialized air squadron formed to intercept Russian drones and missiles. It comprises Ukrainian, American, and Dutch pilots, flying Mirage and F-16 fighters. The unit operates primarily in the central and western parts of Ukraine, to the west of the M05 Odessa to Kiev highway, and has reportedly contributed to improved air defense effectiveness in that area. All of this, the massive Ukrainian strike, and Russia's response, points to one conclusion. Neither side intends to yield in Geneva. According to a number of analysts, should the talks fail to produce a breakthrough, a new massive strike should be expected as early as the night of February 18th, this time with the extensive use of Iskander systems, which would make it significantly more destructive. For now, all eyes are on Geneva. That is all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and take care of yourselves.